right. We're streaming, but only sort of. All the lights are out. I have to get up on a ladder and turn the lights on, or we're not going to see everything. Welcome, everyone. Give me a couple of minutes. I'm going to put up a splash screen like this one right here so that you can. In fact, I'll put it up with a little box here so you can at least see. That's the wrong one. You can see that's not working. So that's what that's all about. So we will, hang on, everyone. I'll be right back. See, how about we now? Okay, we're doing it now, folks. We got light, we got sound, we got a camera. Okay. That's just not, don't know if I'm happy with that. Am I happy with that? We're a little cut off. So let's see if we can get this thing going. Okay, first, let's quickly, before I go live, do the pre-show info. Here's the pre-show info. Here we go. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer A+ study group. This study group was recorded on June 13th, 2018. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer A+ study group after show. This after show was recorded on June 13th, 2018. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. See, it's that easy. Let's see if we can get this party started. We're 49 seconds late. getting things going. What a story I have about getting this going. Okay, let's get microphones set. Cameras are in place. We can get rid of this junk that's on my screen. We can punch this button here. Let me do a quick grab of some video right here. Let me grab that real quick while we're all standing around. And give me a moment to put that into my system. And then we'll be really ready to go. Then we can really do something. So only a minute or two late. There's been worse, people. There's been much worse. Let's take that session grab that I just created and stick it in my TriCaster. Boom. So it's there. That's good. That's shiny. I like it. Okay. I think we're ready to get started. Finally. So, let me fix some things here. We already got problems. What happened there? I don't know what happened there, but we'll fix some of that. Okay. How about we get a presentation on the screen? We almost had no light today. The lighting system in here apparently had a problem, which isn't really what you're shooting for when you're ready to do a live stream. But here we are. We got the live stream. We're ready to go. Things are making noises. Let's turn those off. And let's get started everybody. Oh, you know what I didn't put was the message on the front of the website that shows that we're doing this right now. Let's save that. So that will be available. And we're in good shape. If you're watching this, well, I'll talk about it in a moment. We'll just start the whole show and we'll do the whole thing. And who knows what will go on from there. See, it can't go perfectly well after being off for 3 weeks. This is what happens. All right, everyone, let's get started with this party. Obviously not quickly. Let's get going. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2018 Professor Messer A+ Study Group. It's June the 13th of 2018, which means we're getting our A+ Study Group done a little bit later in the month than when we normally do this. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, chat room, for hanging in there with me. We had a few technical issues trying to get started today. My lights wouldn't turn on. Actually, the power system that I access from my screen, from this system via IP, is not talking to my power distribution unit, which makes me sad. So I got up on a ladder and unplugged everything and plugged it directly into some power outlets. So we're up and running. So thank you for joining us. We've got plenty of questions for you today. We're going to be doing some Q&A during this first hour. And there is a link that I will give you in just a moment that tells you how to participate with that particular link so that you can join in with what we are doing. This is something I do pretty much every month. We've got one of these happening monthly. And of course, you can go back to the professormesser.com website and you can go through all of the previous study groups as well. So if you're studying for your A+, you're trying to get more questions, you're trying to go through and think about why certain answers were right and certain answers were wrong, then you can go back over those previous study groups and have a look. We've got years of them available for you to go back. I'll talk to you in a moment how you can also get the podcast of those as well. I'll be taking phone calls in the second hour, so stick around for that. The phone number is up on the screen. I'll give it to you also when we get to that point as well. Thank you for your ongoing support. We wouldn't be able to provide you with these study groups without you providing us with the financial support we need to keep this thing going. And if you're someone who is watching all of our A+ videos online, all of them are available for you to watch absolutely free. Every second of every video, you can find them on professormesser.com. Some people like to have an offline version, so you can, of course, go to professormesser.com/download901 and find out more about that. Of course, follow us on YouTube and Twitter. You type in professormesser.com/YouTube, /Twitter, /Instagram, / wherever you'd like to find me, and you will find me. Don't forget also about the voucher discounts available at professormesser.com/vouchers. That becomes handy as well. And of course, in the chat room, I'll put the link to the live stream. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice there's no chat available on YouTube. You can find that chat at professormesser.com/live. I will also provide you with a 1 hour of continuing education credit in the webinar category sometime during this first hour. I will give you some information on how you're able to do that. I'm noticing more people these days are taking the Cert Master CE instead of accumulating continuing education credits. That seems to be the least expensive and easiest way to do things these days. We can talk more about that in the second hour if you'd like to know, but I will still hand out continuing education credits. It's 1 hour of webinar just for watching this, and you can earn that whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on the replay. This is all about the 220.901 and the 220.902 exams in this study group. And we'll talk about the differences between those in a moment. You have to take both of those, by the way, to have your A+ certification. So if you're someone who is trying to learn more about the A+ exam and what you need to know, you can, of course, get that here. So here's the 220.901, the 220.902. You can't see the 902 because my head's here, but it's right there. It's where this hand normally is. If I could probably get rid of that on the screen, you'd be able to see it. There you go. So you can see a big difference between the two. I generally recommend that you take one of these at a time to be able to pass these. In this study group, I'm going to give you questions from both the 901 and the 902. So you'll get a little bit of everything. Not only do we have these questions that we do today, but I also have questions available on my website through a couple of books that I have called the Pop Quiz Collection PDFs. You can find those on professormesser.com/PQC, Pop Quiz Collection. Those books have combined 1,300 questions for the A+ exam, more than you would find anywhere else. It's extensive. There's also performance-based questions in there. I put some of my study tips in there and my test tips, and it's all digital PDF. You can download it immediately. There's also free questions on my website at PopQuiz, professormesser.com/popquiz. So if you're somebody who'd like to get some free Pop Quiz questions, they're all there. This study group, by the way, and my Network Plus study group and my Security Plus study group are also available as podcasts. You can download those, link to them, add the RSS feed into your podcast catcher at professormesser.com/podcasts. Podcasts. You can find it. I'm sure it's there. You shouldn't have any problem finding the link to those podcasts, and you can listen to them live on that page, or you can, of course, add them to your podcast viewer. Now, if you want to answer questions today, because people in the chat room are already asking, how do I answer the questions? Here's how you do it. You open up a new browser window. You go to professormesser.com/QA. Not sure what the QA stands for. It stands for something. I don't recall. But if you go to professormesser.com/QA, it will redirect you to a website that I use called Socrative, where you will have a question already waiting for you. So you'll know if you typed it in right. There's also Socrative apps you can get for your mobile device. So you can download the Socrative Student app. There's also a Socrative Teacher app. That's for me. The Socrative Student app is for you. And if you do that, there will be a question waiting for you. It's a question from our last month's study group. I call this our study group rewind so that we can see if we really remember how to get in here and answer questions. So hopefully you're able to see this. The question you should see is, which of these would be the best way to configure SSO in Windows? So already you have to know a couple of things here. This is a question from last month. Hopefully you were following us last month. And if you were, you would see these potential answers available. Is it A, connect to a Windows domain, B, use a flash drive, C, restore from a recovery partition, D, run as an elevated user, or E, connect your phone over Bluetooth? So you've got a few options here to be able to figure this out. Which of these would be the best way to configure SSO in Windows? How would you do that? I guess you have to know what SSO is. And if you do know, you can go to professormesser.com/QA and you'll be able to answer the question yourself. So you've got those options available to you to be able to make that happen. This is the single page you'll have to go to, by the way. You don't have to go to multiple pages to answer the next questions that we're going to come up to. If you can see this question and you can answer this question, simply wait where you are on this page. The next question will appear automatically. Now, if we look at the answers that we are getting, you'll see that 79% of you have said connect to a Windows domain. 15% of you said run as an elevated user. 5% said use a flash drive. 2% said restore from a recovery partition, which isn't that always the right answer. And 0% connect your phone over Bluetooth. Nobody thinks that the case at all. So you can see that you've got a number of options to choose from. You can lock those answers in. The first thing you'd probably want to do on this particular question is figure out what SSO happens to be. And SSO, whether you're using Windows or any operating system, generally stands for single sign-on. If you're someone who's worked in a Windows environment before, you know that when the system starts up, you're at work, you plug in your laptop or you connect to your desktop computer, and the first thing that happens is it prompts you for a username and a password. Sometimes there's a Windows domain information there as well. And when you log in, you're done. You don't have to log in anymore. You may be printing to a printer. You may be connecting to mapped drives across the network. You may be connecting to other devices. You may be accessing other resources on the network. And you'll notice you never have to put in your username and password again. It's a single sign-on. You only have to sign on one single time, and that's it. Windows is very good about having this single sign-on functionality, but you have to join the Windows domain. You have to log in with your Windows domain login, and you can very easily at that point take advantage of the single sign-on functionality of Windows. So if you're someone who did answer A, connect to a Windows domain, 78% of you got that one right. So that may be useful. So to be able to do that. There's also running as an elevated user doesn't help you with a single sign-on. You might want to run as an elevated user if you're installing a new application or a new driver into your computer. Using a flash drive simply allows you to either store files on that flash drive or boot from that flash drive. It has nothing to do with single sign-on. Restoring from a recovery partition, well, that's probably a little drastic if you're trying to simply log into your computer, and connecting to your phone over Bluetooth nobody chose anyway. And of course, that would not be the problem at all. In the chat room, a number of you are saying that you're having the video cut in and cut out. All of the video streams are going directly from me to YouTube, and so you're getting the video stream from YouTube. You may want to click the cog wheel at the bottom right of the video and maybe choose a lower resolution. Perhaps that will help with whatever congestion you might be having on your local network. Let's do some questions today then. We are now past the question that we chose for last week. I'd like to do a question that's brand new. Now, some of you know on the A+ exams and the Network Plus and the Security Plus, they're not all multiple choice questions. Some of the first bunches of questions, there'll be a handful of questions you get at the very beginning of the exam, are what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. And although the name is a little odd, it doesn't really explain what these are. These are questions that are anything but multiple choice. So these might be fill in the blank. You might be asked to drag and drop onto a particular part of the screen. You may be asked to put things in a particular order. It might be a matching question. You may have to match terms, or you may have to match colors, or you may have to match pictures. Just depends on what's there. So the performance-based questions you get can vary. Everyone gets a different set. Everyone gets a different number of questions. You never know exactly what you're going to get. But what I do on my study groups is I first give you a performance-based question right out of the gate, just like you get on the exam. So here is your performance-based question of the month. This is what I want you to do. I want you to match these network protocols to their function. And I've got 4 separate protocols. Not a bunch, I guess, 4 of them. 4 protocols, which are CIFS, SSH, LDAP, and SLP. And I want you to match them to these functions, but you'll notice I have a lot more than just 4 functions here. So I have A through G. Now, we're only going to use 4 of them, so not all of these functions will be used. For those of you listening on the podcast, here are the functions. Function A, find Mac OS services by name. B is convert fully qualified domain names to IP addresses. C is gather statistics from network devices. D is encrypt a terminal connection. E is log in to a VPN connection. F is print from Windows to a network printer. And G is automatically assign IP addresses. So if you think that they're already matched up, you would put into your answers 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D. Now, that's not the answer. That's my hint for you. I did not do that. So you'll have to figure this out to put them in. Now, if you think you know the answer, do not put this in the chat room. You want to instead go to professormesser.com/QA, just as it says down here at the bottom. And that QA will take you right to where you can put in 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D. And you're done. Don't put that in. That is not the right answer. I'm going to show some of the answers. Some of you are already putting some of these answers in. And fortunately, you're not putting in 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D. You've actually decided that these are a little bit different. So let's go through these again if you're listening in. 1 is CIFS, 2 is SSH, 3 is LDAP, and 4 is SLP. And so the possible functions are A, find Mac OS services by name. B is convert fully qualified domain names to IP addresses. C is gather statistics from network devices. D is encrypt a terminal connection. E is log in to a VPN connection. F is print from Windows to a network printer. And G is automatically assign IP addresses. So hopefully you've gotten a feel from that, what they might be. I like some of you, or they're just putting 1 is pass, 2 is pass, 3 is pass, 4 is. You do have to know your acronyms for these. So this is one of those that becomes pretty important to be able to know on the exam. I think that whenever you start trying to look at these exams, one of the things that people will do is just try to memorize the name and the definition of this, or the acronym, what the acronym stands for. But you'll find on the exam, the CompTIA exam doesn't tend to ask you, what does CIFS stand for? What does SSH stand for? What does LDAP stand for? What does SLP stand for? They don't ask you that. They don't really care so much that you know what it stands for. They want to know, do you understand what it does? So that's the important part, is you really do have to go through this and understand what, not only what these acronyms mean, what the abbreviations are, but really what do these things do for you? What value do these provide to what you're doing? So a number of you are putting in some of these answers here. I see now that I've mentioned that you could pass on it. People realize, oh, I can pass? Let's pass. That's true. Give it a shot, though. This is one on the exam, by the way, that you are not penalized for wrong answers. You obviously don't get any points if you don't have any questions, or the question isn't right. But if you just take a guess at it, they don't take points that you've already earned away from you. What I mean by that is it doesn't hurt to guess. You should always guess. Never leave questions blank on your exam, and always take a stab at it. Always guess at what it could be. And if you don't know, put 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D. Maybe one of them will link up. But I imagine a number of you have probably got a pretty good idea of these particular protocols, or at least some of them. Maybe you can get 1 or 2 of them. And a few of them are saying, all right, I know what 1 is, I know what 2 is. Oh, 3, what is that? How does that work? I think I know. It has something to do with this thing. And that's exactly one of the things you should think about doing as well. So let's go through these now that you've had some time to look them over. Let's go through these, and I'll give you my answers, and you can check to see if that's what you thought as well. So let's step through these particular questions. So we have 1 is CIFS. So let's look at CIFS is this F, print from Windows to a network printer. Now, CIFS, you might also hear this referred to as SMB. They are functionally the same thing. They're slightly different in their implementation, but you may hear them referred to in the very same ways. So if you see SMB and you see CIFS, then you probably have a pretty good idea that those are probably pretty close to the same thing. And in this case, SMB and CIFS is the way that Windows, it's the protocol that Windows uses to talk to each other. So one Windows system talks to another Windows system, or Windows systems talk to a printer. Anything dealing with the internal communication of Windows is using CIFS or SMB. So, of course, printing from Windows to a network printer, we could probably bet that CIFS is the best choice. And in fact, from the things that we had to choose from, that's absolutely the best choice. that we would have available. Let's do the second one, SSH. SSH is D, encrypted terminal connection. This is one of the things that's important you know for Security Plus, but obviously it's in the A+ exam as well, is that if you're connecting over a terminal connection to another device, you need to be able to access that device using some type of encrypted communication. You don't want to log in with your username and password and have all of that information available to be seen by someone who may be monitoring the network and capturing those packets. So instead, you use an encrypted connection, and Secure Shell, which is SSH, is what allows you to encrypt that communication. LDAP, this is one number of you got caught up on. LDAP is E, log in to a VPN connection. Anytime you see LDAP, you can think of a large database of information, primarily username passwords, but it can be also other information as well. For instance, the Microsoft Active Directory stores information into a large database, and you can access that information using a set of standard protocols called LDAP. That means if you're logging in or trying to authenticate to a service, whether you're logging into the network, you're logging into a printer, you're logging into a website, or you're logging into a VPN, there has to be some check to see if the username and password that you've put in actually matches what's in the database. And the way that that service talks to the database to confirm that your username and password is correct is that it uses the LDAP protocol. So if you're logging into a VPN connection, you're probably having that VPN concentrator communicate back to the central database over LDAP, check your username and password, get the confirmation, and allow you access to the VPN. And the last one on our list was SLP. If you want to find Mac OS services by name, that is SLP. That's a Mac OS protocol. And as you may recall on the 901 and the 902 exams, 901 has a little bit of the networking piece for Mac OS, but obviously Mac OS, Linux, and Windows are all in the 902 exam. So you have to know more than just Windows when you're working through these protocols. And SLP is a way that you can list out all of the available services on your Mac front end. You can think of it as being comparable to the SMB that's in Windows. SLP does a similar type of thing, similar function. It's a subset of what you might see on the SMB side. Let's look at the other ones that I did not have in this list. So we did have, let me find this right here. We had DNS listed. If we chose B, convert from a fully qualified domain name to an IP address, that would be DNS. I did not list DNS, but I'm putting these in here so you know what those were. C was gather statistics from network devices. You can use SNMP to do that, the Simple Network Management Protocol. And G, automatically assign IP addresses, is DHCP, the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. So the first four obviously were the ones I was looking for. Maybe you saw those last three and you knew what those were. And if you do, you're in pretty good shape for this part of the exam. You need to know all of these different protocols. You need to understand what they do. And in the case of this exam, there's some additional information you need on those as well. Make sure you check with the exam objectives to know exactly what's important for you to know on this exam. So pretty important. So hopefully that matching function helped you a bit. This is probably very common to the type of matching function you might have on the exam. It might not be protocols and the protocol functions, but it might be related to other topics that are important to know for the exam. Let's go to another question. I have a multiple choice question for you. So now that we're done with the performance-based questions, we can focus on multiple choice. And our first multiple choice question of the day is that you're setting up a laptop in the conference room, but the projector is displaying your laptop's background instead of the contents of the laptop LCD screen. Which of these would be the best way to proceed? So you've got maybe a presentation on the screen, but the LCD projector is showing your background. Maybe it's a picture of your vacation. So it's not showing the presentation that you would like to show on your screen. So why would that be? Well, I have some options for you. So if you know these, don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. The possible answers are A, specify the video output option in the BIOS. Option B is to use the laptop's function key to choose the appropriate video configuration. C is you select the correct input option on the projector. F is you fold down and close the laptop screen. And E is you choose the display resolution in the control panel. So A is, so you're setting up a laptop in the conference room. The projector is displaying your laptop's background instead of the contents of the laptop LCD screen. Which of these would be the best way to proceed? Would it be A, specify the video output option in the BIOS? Would it be B, use the laptop's function key to choose the appropriate video configuration? Would it be C, select the correct input option on the projector? Would it be D, fold down and close laptop screen? Or would it be E, choose the display resolution in the control panel? If you think you know what the answer is, you can go to professormaster.com/QA. This has happened to me. So I know that this is probably something that's happened to one of you as well. This is something you run into when you have these LCD projectors. You're in a conference room. It's not your equipment. Often I would be walking into a place where I've never been before. Part of my last job was I would just travel from place to place. We'd visit 3 or 4 different customers in a day. We'd walk into a different conference room every single time. We'd plug into the computer, and you never knew what would happen next. You would always have to figure out the details. And if you were very familiar with what's going on here, the answer should jump right out at you. You'll figure out this piece. This is one that if you are someone who also maybe has an LCD projector at home, if you've got, because we have more and more of those these days as people are setting up their home to be more of a movie type environment, a home theater. You've got people that have multiple screens that they're connecting. Maybe they've got a separate terminal screen or a separate monitor they're plugging into their laptop. It's a similar scenario. So maybe one of these options is jumping out at you as well. Let's see how we did with this one. I'm going to flip back over. Let's click the how do we do question. 76% of you said B, use the laptop's function key to choose the appropriate video configuration. That's a pretty healthy amount. But is that the right answer? Because 12% of you said C, select the correct input option on the projector. 7% of you said E, choose the display resolution in the control panel. 4% of you chose D, fold down and close the laptop screen. And 0% said specify the video output option in the BIOS. Nobody liked setting the video output option in the BIOS at all. 0%. Usually I get someone to bite on one of these questions. Not so in this particular case. So what do we want to do if we run into that before? Well, this is a case where you effectively now have dual displays. Most laptops obviously have one display on them. But when you plug in an LCD projector, you're effectively plugging in a separate display. And you now have to tell the laptop, how do we use that separate display? So one of the most common ways on a laptop is there's a special key, a function key, because normally a desktop keyboard doesn't have a key to move you around between different displays. So on a laptop, we have to add additional functions because it is a laptop. So these secondary functions do a lot of different things, but one of those functions will be to tell the laptop, how should we use this external display? Should we just use the laptop? Should we duplicate what's on our laptop screen with the separate display? Should we extend the display, which is probably what is happening in this scenario, is you have one display in your laptop and it's extended over into the LCD projector. And obviously what we're looking at on our laptop screen will never be shown on that because it's effectively a separate screen. We'd have to drag it over to that screen to show it. Or do we just show the projection only, which I guess is an option. So one of those might be an option for you as well. There's sometimes some laptops, there's also a switch. So sometimes you can close the laptop screen and hopefully determine what happens at that point. That's not a guarantee, though. It's certainly not the best answer because in your presentation, you probably want to move from one slide to another, unless you have one of those rare presentations that's one slide. We'll close up our screen on our laptop and we'll never change the slide on there again. Obviously not our best option here because we have a very specific example where we really are trying to display something that's on our screen and be able to control it. So those of you that did answer, the 73% of you that answered B, use the laptop's function key to choose the appropriate video configuration is absolutely correct. That is exactly what you do. This comes from the 22901 section 3.3 video laptop features is the one that will give you that information. So that was a 22901 question to have that there. Hopefully it's one you were able to find as well. And if you've ever been in a case where something doesn't quite look right on that LCD projector, be sure to use that function key to toggle it over to the right video configuration. Let's do another multiple choice question. Here's one for you. You're concerned that a Windows 8.1 service may be using an excessive amount of memory. Which of these would be the best way to evaluate this service? Would it be A, view the Services tab in the Task Manager? Would it be B, filter for services in the Event Viewer? Would it be C, select the Services applet in the Control Panel? Would it be D, run the service in safe mode? Or would it be E, configure the service to run in Windows 7 compatibility mode? So you're concerned a Windows 8.1 service may be using an excessive amount of memory. That never happens. Which of these would be the best way to evaluate this service? Would it be view the Services tab in the Task Manager, filter for services in the Event Viewer, select the Services applet in the Control Panel, run the service in safe mode, or configure the service to run in Windows 7 compatibility mode? So one of those is going to be the best choice for this. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to answer that. Just pop open a new window. It'll be waiting for you. If you're just joining us, you can, of course, go in there. You don't have to authenticate. You don't have to put your name. You don't have to add any information. Just go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer that question. Probably want to pop open a new window when you do that, though, or else you'll lose this. You won't be able to see the video at all when you're working through this. This is something that obviously happens all the time, regardless of what operating system you're using. You could be running Windows, you could be running Mac OS, you could be running Linux, you could be running anything. But sometimes an application just is not written well, and it begins to use an excessive amount of memory. I'm looking at you, browser programmers. What is the deal with browsers needing so much memory? But there they are. They use an excessive amount of memory. But there is a way to have a look at your memory usage to be able to evaluate how this service is running. And you should absolutely do that by doing this particular function between A and E. Hopefully you know what one of these are. Now that we've got a number of people that have answered, let's see how we did with this one. 86% of you said view the Services tab in the Task Manager. This is one where I'm trying to shoot for 50% of you getting it right. So 85% was a pretty big number. But is that the right answer? We have 6% that said filter for services in the Event Viewer. 4% of you said run the service in safe mode. And then a tie for fourth between select the Services applet in the Control Panel and configure the service to run in Windows 7 compatibility mode. Well, you can see by the number of people that have answered this one, viewing the Services tab in the Task Manager becomes pretty useful to be able to see that. There's so many different things we can do in the Task Manager to be able to see this. There are all kinds of different views available, and the Services tab, the Monitor tab, you've got tabs available for performance, app history, startup users. The whole view from the Task Manager in Windows 8.1 is extensive. And you can see everything from here. I like to add on other types of metrics as well. So I can view I/O access. So you can see if a particular application is accessing the drive. So you can see, are they reading and writing to the drive a lot? You can watch those numbers accumulate. And you can put on delta versus an overall number. It becomes really, really useful to have that functionality. If you can become an expert of the Task Manager, then you're going to be very, very capable of trying to narrow down where some of these problems are. It's the first major step you can take to try to figure out how is your system performing, how are all the applications affecting the system performance. It's a great place to go to be able to see those. So if you're someone who did answer A, view the Services tab in the Task Manager, that's a great place to go to evaluate that service and see what's going on. Going to the Event Viewer and filtering for the service isn't going to tell you a lot about the performance of the service. It may tell you information on what the service has done, but it's not going to tell you if the service is using a lot of memory, a lot of CPU, a lot of I/O access. There's no way to know those things from the Event Viewer. Selecting the Services applet in the Control Panel will give you a list of the services that are running on your computer, but again, they don't give you anything relating to the performance of that particular service. Running the service in safe mode, which might be a pretty good option in this particular case, but there's no way to run a service just in a safe mode. There's no technical way to do that without running your entire system in safe mode. And we're not trying to run the entire system in safe mode. We're just trying to run the service in something that can give us more information. So there's no way to run a single service in safe mode. D obviously would never happen ever. And then E is configure the service to run in Windows 7 compatibility mode. Well, you really can't run a service that way very easily. But our issue here wasn't related to its compatibility. Our issue here is related to understanding how much memory is this particular service using and how much CPU, how's it performing in its current configuration. Our best choice here is obviously A, view the services tab in the task manager. This comes directly from the 229.02 section 1.4 using the task manager video. So if you want to learn more about the task manager, that's a great video that you can check out. There's a ton of information you need to know for the A+ exam, the 229.01 and the 229.02. You've seen just a little bit of that today. It's extensive. The information you need to know about operating systems, about hardware, about networking, about security, about mobile devices, it's all in there. Now, I, of course, recommend that you watch my videos and you take plenty of notes. But a number of you don't have time to go through every video. You'd like to perhaps have pictures of these things that I have in my videos, the images that I've collected, and some of the graphs and some of the other details that I have built for these videos. And I put them all into a set of course notes for you. So I've already done the note taking for you. The course notes are available for the 229.01 and the 229.02. And you can see lots of detail. There's the 901 course notes, and here's the 902 course notes. A lot of information here about the task manager and Windows modes and being able to understand the features and the upgrade paths. They're all in here. So if you're someone who would like to have a consolidated view of all of these notes, you might want to look at the course notes. They're available at professormesser.com/A+CN, and they're only $15 each. Every dollar, of course, goes back to keeping the website up and running and allowing me the time and ability to make new videos for you. Mrs. Professor Messer also insisted that I have a physical version of these as well. So the $15 is for the PDF. If you'd like to make the PDF something that's real, a physical edition of the course notes, they're exactly the same as the digital edition, but they're on simply printed dead wood paper from a tree. So I've got all of these. You can see it's got everything in it that you had in the original. And this is for the 901 and the 902 course notes. You can find out about those as well at that link at professormesser.com/A+CN, because people will see two things there. They'll see the digital version, and then they'll see this book version. It's this book version that is simply the same as the digital. It's just a physical edition that you can take advantage of. Thank you for your support for that. It's something that goes a long way to keeping this entire train on the tracks. I want to thank you for your ongoing support, and thanks for your consideration for this version of the course notes. You can, of course, find links to that also from the top of the website in any of the pull-down menus. Let's do another question, though. I've got plenty of questions here for you since we're going through these. I've got one right here. Let's look at this question. I'm going to make this so you can see this in Socrative as well. Cameron is printing a copy of a status report to a network printer. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this printer output? Now, obviously, if you're listening on the podcast, you don't see the printer output. But I can tell you, looking at this printer page, wow, that's a lot of gobbledygook there. That's a lot. It's just a page full of odd graphical characters, blocks. You can find a letter or a number in there that you can recognize here and there, but it's mostly something that is just a mess. We aren't quite sure exactly what's causing the problem there. So I do have some options, though, since this is a multiple choice question, at what this could be. So would it be A, the printer has an intermittent network connection? Would it be B, the printer is configured with the incorrect page description language? Would it be C, Cameron's IP configuration is incorrect? Would it be D, the printer has a scratched drum? Or would it be E, Cameron and the printer are on different VLANs? One of those would be something. Yeah, that's a mess. Hopefully it's one that you have gone through, has seen this as well. Maybe you've run into this problem before. If you think you have, and you know what the answer is, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to see that as well. Somebody's also complaining about the fact that I can't type very well in the answers. Thank you, website. Thank you, chat room for letting me know that I can't type well. This is, by the way, not the only question you've seen today where I've typed badly. The others were in the very first question of the day. But this is a live stream, so it's kind of hard to go back and fix all of my odd typings. Cameron's printing a copy of his status report to a network printer. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this crazy printer output? Would it be A, the printer has an intermittent network connection? Is it B, the printer is configured with the incorrect page description language? Is it C, Cameron's IP configuration is incorrect? Is it D, the printer has a scratched drum? Or is it E, Cameron and the printer are on different VLANs? So hopefully that's one you've run into as well. Hopefully it's one that has fixed the problem that you have seen in working with your printers. Maybe you've run into this and realized, oh, this is something I know about. I've run into this problem before. Maybe I can also go through this and figure out the details of what is happening. So if you think you know, go to professormester.com/QA and let's see what people have answered with this one. We've got a mixture here as well. 78% of you have said B, the printer is configured with the incorrect page description language. 10% of you said the printer has a scratched drum. 6% of you said Cameron and the printer are on different VLANs. 4% of you said Cameron's IP configuration is incorrect, and 2% said the printer has an intermittent network connection. There could be a lot of reasons for getting bad output like this. And this garbled bunch of unreadable nonsense that's on a page could be because of a number of different things that were associated with this. For example, garbled characters on the paper could be related to a bad printer output or the wrong model of printer that you're printing to. So I think whenever I look at what I'm doing when I'm printing to a printer, it's useful to know what printer driver I'm using. That can be useful as well. So you may want to check and make sure the printer drivers are the correct. There's also a challenge in making sure that you're printing with the correct printer description language, the page description language, to be able to talk the proper language to that printer. You can't just send printer text and it prints the text. There's a whole set of separate languages that printers know. So the printers may know two of the most popular languages, for example, PCL, which is very common to find on HP and other laser printers as well. And one of the very original page description languages is PostScript. So you may find that your driver is printing PCL to a PostScript printer, or you may be printing PostScript to a PCL printer. And you may be getting something on the output that you weren't expecting. You're expecting one page of a graphic, and instead you get 50 pages of nonsense that gets printed out on the printer, which is not what you want to do as well. So that's definitely something you want to look out for, and it's usually related to the driver that you're using. So usually go back to the operating system, have a look at the driver that you happen to be using, and see if you happen to know what that happens to be. Indeed, in this case, the printer could possibly be configured with the incorrect page description language. If you answered B, you got that one right. Now, why wouldn't it be an intermittent network connection? Well, in that particular case, you wouldn't be getting any output, and it wouldn't be garbled, but it just wouldn't show up. That could be a scenario you might run into. Cameron's IP configuration is incorrect. If that was the case, we wouldn't get anything printed on that printer. We'd never be able to communicate to that printer. The printer has a scratched drum. If you do have a problem with a scratch on the drum, remember the drum is rotating around inside of that printer, and to print an entire page, you usually go multiple times through that drum. And if the drum is scratched, it creates a single line all the way around the drum where it's not able to properly have any toner not connect to it. The toner is immediately interested in staying where that scratch is. So when that happens, you end up getting a single line all the way down the page. If there's more than one scratch, you'll get multiple lines down the page. In our case, this was not a case of having multiple lines down the page. It was just a bunch of nonsense printed on the page. So that would not be the right answer either. And the last one is Cameron and the printer are on different VLANs. It's perfectly normal to have devices like printers and users on completely different VLANs. That's not an issue. As long as we're able to communicate to that device, we should be able to print. And in this case, Cameron was able to communicate to this device. The problem was that the print was not what people were expecting. So in our case, it would definitely be B. The printer is configured with the incorrect page description language. Don't want to run into that scenario at all. Let's do another question. I've got a multiple choice one here that will take us to a command. The question is, which of the following would be the best use of the Chkdsk command? Yes, I'm being intentionally obtuse with this because hopefully this is something you've already run into with the Chkdsk command. We'll talk more about what that is in a moment. Your possible options are, for those of you wondering what would be the best use of the Chkdsk command, is it A, modify the size of your boot partition? Would it be B, temporarily change the boot device? Would it be C, enable or disable a storage drive? Would it be E or D, reset the boot sector? Or would it be E, examine your drive for any bad sectors? It's going to be one of those. So which of the following would be the best use of the Chkdsk command? Hopefully something you've seen before. Is it A, modify the size of your boot partition? B, temporarily change the boot device? C, enable or disable a storage drive? D, reset the boot sector? Or E, examine your drive for any bad sectors? Perhaps you've done this before. And being able to make this happen, the Chkdsk command. If you think you know the answers, go to professionalism.com/QA. And you'll also be able to answer this question. Remember, don't put the question or any hints in the chat room. You want to absolutely pretend that you're in this exam scenario where no resources are available to you. Hopefully that's one that you know as well. Be able to go through and figure out the details of what this particular answer might be. If you've ever run this command, you might already be familiar with this. This is a pretty good command to be familiar with. And of course, this command is in the CompTIA exam objectives. You should know how to use this command and many of the variants associated with this command. Have a look through and see if you happen to know what this one happens to be. This is one wherever I start looking at all of the different options available to me, you should absolutely go through and look at every single one. There might be some of these options that you can throw out immediately. So this is what I do whenever I'm in my exam environment. I'm trying to figure out what it could possibly be. Sometimes it's almost better to get rid of the things you know it couldn't possibly be, and that might narrow things down. If you're going to take a guess, then you have a little bit more of an educated guess that you're taking. At least it might give you a better chance. Maybe you don't know the answer, but sometimes luck is good. And that's what we want to be able to do with that as well. Which of the following would be the best use of the Chkdsk command, which is what that Chkdsk stands for? How do we do on this? 96% of you said examine your drive for any bad sectors. Not a lot of you have done this, obviously, with the Chkdsk command, because that is the correct answer. Examine your drive for any bad sectors. Modifying the size of your boot partition, temporarily changing the boot device, enabling or disable a storage drive, and resetting the boot sector only got 1 and 2% of this. So this is one that most people were very familiar with. Now, if you've never run this on your computer before, then you're probably pretty fortunate. This is one where you do want to go to your computer and perhaps run this every once in a while to see how it's running. There's different flags you can use on the command, where something like Chkdsk/F would fix logical errors on the disk itself, things relating to the file system. And sometimes the file system gets mixed up on where files happen to be stored, what sectors of the drive happen to have the files. There's a big index that's used. There's actually multiple indices that are used on the drive to be able to recognize where different files are, and it's able to look through those and logically make sure that that index is still working properly. That's usually a pretty quick one to run with the Chkdsk/F. Chkdsk/R is quite different. It is, of course, not only performing that same check as the /F. That's why I put in here about implying that the /F is there, because if you run a /R, it's going to run the /F as well. It'll do that first. And then once it decides that the file system is okay, it now performs a very intensive study of every sector on the drive. So if you have a lot of different sectors, if it's a very big drive, you're going to watch now as this goes through and make sure that it's able to read and write to every single one of the sectors on the drive. If it runs into an issue with the sectors not being readable or not being writable, it will mark those as being bad so that you don't try to put real data into that. So if it's a brand new drive or it's a brand new computer for you and you're wondering, is this storage device really something I can trust? You may want to run Chkdsk/R to make sure that that's the case. That might help you a lot in trying to make that determination on whether that drive is something that's going to work for you or not. So those of you indeed that answered E, examine your drive for any bad sectors, the 95% of you did get that one absolutely correct. Now, modifying the size of your boot partition is not something that's done with Chkdsk. You can, of course, use different commands from the startup section of Windows or being able to go into the configuration of your system to modify the boot partition, but Chkdsk is not the one that is going to be able to do that for you. So I've also got issues whenever you start working through your computer and trying to figure out, what do we do? How do we resolve some of these issues? You may want to have a look at some of these. Temporarily changing the boot device can be done with some other options as well, and configuring the startup options of your computer, but Chkdsk is not the one that can temporarily change your boot device. Enabling or disabling a storage drive is not done from the Chkdsk command either. That may be something that's best done in your BIOS. And resetting the boot sector is not something that is done from Chkdsk, but it's certainly something you need to know for the exam. That is definitely in the exam objectives. Make sure you're completely aware of what those options might be and some of the things that you can run on your computer. Pretty important that you go through and understand the details of those, especially if you're planning at some point to be able to check these drives and make sure that you're comfortable storing data on them. I want to thank the folks at GTS Learning. I want to quickly remind you they have special pricing for you. If you're trying to find a book for your A+ exam, why not use the same book that I use to be able to create these videos? And you can find that from the GTS Learning website. There's a special price available for their ebook, $35. And if you include the live lab, so you have some hands-on learning with this, special pricing there for $109, which includes the ebook as well. You can find out about that at professormaster.com/live labs, where they have a book. They've got 400 practice questions. You've got a year's worth of access to the live labs. It tells you everything you need to know for the 901 and the 902 exam. It is a very comprehensive book, and it's straight and to the point, which is why I like their books. They don't give you a lot of detail about the history. They don't go into a lot of information that will not be included on the exam. They focus completely on the exam objectives. And when I'm trying to earn a certification, I'm trying to get in there, learn what I need to know, and pass that exam. I can always go back and learn the history. In fact, the history is fascinating. You should, of course, go back and learn everything you can. But our objective here is to get that certification. This is a great book to allow you to do that. Find out more and get the special pricing only from this link at professormaster.com/live labs. That may be able to help you as well. Well, I've got another question for you. So hopefully this is one I can give you as well. This is a long one, so bear with me as we step through this. Sam is a network administrator who's been given the responsibility for connecting her company's development team to a cloud-based service. This service will provide a basic development infrastructure that the programmers will then customize. Which of these best describes this type of cloud-based service? So the possible answers are A, hybrid, B, IaaS, C is SaaS, D is PaaS, and E is private. Let's go through that question again. And again, don't answer in the chat room. You want to be able to answer on the Socrative at professormaster.com/QA. Let's go through this question again. Sam's a network administrator who's been given the responsibility for connecting her company's development team to a cloud-based service. This service will provide a basic development infrastructure that the programmers will customize. Which of these best describes this type of cloud-based service? Maybe you've run into this cloud-based service. This is obviously one we do need to know for the exam. In fact, all of these terms are on the exam objectives, so it could technically be any of these. Is it A, hybrid, B, IaaS, C is SaaS, D is PaaS, and E is private? One of those cloud-based services are going to be the right ones. If you know the answer, go to professormaster.com/QA, and you can answer those as well. It might be something that would be useful to know. Whenever you start getting into cloud-based services, there's so many options available for what you need to know. So make sure you go through and understand what all those options are as well. This is one that will be very useful if you start doing more and more cloud-based services, or even just talking about cloud-based services, because you'll find that most organizations have a mix of different types of cloud-based services that they use. And it's useful if you can communicate with them in their own language and being able to understand what these might be. We've had a number of people answer this one. Let's see how we did with this one. Here's one that's not quite as straightforward as the questions we had before, and we've got kind of a tie for first. We've got two that are in the lead here. BIAAS and CSAAS are the two. I know that drives some people crazy when I say it like that, but I'm not trying to give something away. We'll use some of the proper terminology in a bit. 31% of you said IAAS, 28% of you said SAAS or SAS, 21% of you said PAS or PAAS, 13% said hybrid, and 7% said private. So this comes directly from the 22902 exam section 2.3. The video is Basic Cloud Concepts, and the one I want to tell you about is the Platform as a Service. Platform as a Service is very similar to other cloud-based services because you don't have to worry about having your own servers or managing your own servers. You don't have to manage your own software. You don't have to have a maintenance team to take care of it or an IT group. You don't need any heating, ventilation, or air conditioning because it's in somebody else's data center. You have a platform that's available to you. So you're also putting all the data out there. You're not controlling the people that are running it. You're not controlling the infrastructure. You're simply usually with a browser screen, and your browser is logging in to this platform as a service. The part that makes it a platform as a service is that it's a customizable platform. So you can think of a bunch of building blocks or Legos, and you're effectively buying a company that has an enormous toy box full of Legos, full of building blocks. And they say, whatever you'd like to build, you can build it. We've already got the blocks here. You simply have your developers put the blocks in the order that you would like. If you need an inventory tracking system, here's a bunch of blocks here that allow you to input inventory. Maybe I've got a block that allow you to do scanning of barcodes. Maybe I've got a block that also can create reports for you. Maybe instead of an inventory system, maybe you need a way to track accounts payable. I'll create an accounts payable platform. Now I've already got blocks that are specific to accounts payable, and I can create those, put those blocks together in a way that will create the accounts payable application that you'd like to use. This is a very, very common way to build out something that's very customizable, but it has all the advantages of being in the cloud. So you don't have to do anything relating to managing this yourself, having your own servers and your own software. You don't have to build it from scratch because they already have the building blocks that are available for you. So you don't have to have developers starting from the very beginning trying to get this running. Oh, you need a way to scan barcodes? Here's the block. Click. We'll put it right on top. Now you can scan barcodes. It's really something that's in many cases that easy for the developers to do. So the platform as a service becomes very useful. A very good example of platform as a service are things that are available from places like Salesforce.com. Salesforce.com obviously has a software as a service offering that they provide that is a Salesforce product. But a lot of what Salesforce.com has done is to really modularize their back-end infrastructure. And so they also will sell you their platform as a service and tell you, build whatever you'd like. Make it yourself. Get your developers on it. We'll give you the building blocks and you're good to go, which is why DPAAS, PAS, is your platform as a service. 21% of you chose DPAS to be able to do that, and that is the right answer. It wouldn't be hybrid. A hybrid configuration is one where you have people that are using this service as an internal private cloud, but you also have people accessing it from the outside from a public cloud perspective. Infrastructure as a service is one where an organization is simply giving you hardware, and that's it. It's up to you to load the software. It's up to you to load the operating system. In some cases, you're even managing that, or in some cases, they're managing it for you, but they're providing you with the hardware, and you have to do everything else as well. Software as a service is, we just spoke about that. That's a service that's already pre-built for you. There's no programming you have to do. A lot of you use Google Mail or use Yahoo Mail or you use other external mail systems. And in those particular cases, that is a software as a service. We don't have to program our mail inbox. It's already there waiting for us. We simply log in and we access our mail. And we have private. Private cloud is one that you're building internally to your organization. It's one that's not accessible by third parties. It's one where you're creating that virtualized environment and then you're building it out as you need it. So if you answered D, PAAS, for platform as a service, that is the one we're looking for. And in fact, that is the word that we're going to use as our continuing education credit word of the month. If you are watching this video for continuing education credit, either live or on a replay, you need to follow these instructions and I'll be able to send you 1 hour of continuing education unit credit through your email. What you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link there. Click on that Contact Us link. It'll bring up a set of forms that you will fill out. We'll ask you for your name, your email address, and then we'll have some information in there that you'll be able to put into a box. Somewhere in that box, you can put a message to me because I'm the one who's reading them, but you can also somewhere in there put the word PAAS, Platform as a Service, so that I know that you watched this. And you should also, because it helps me, tell me that it is the June 2018 A+ study group. That helps me a little bit in finding these things, especially if you're watching this a year later. And I have to go back through my records and make sure that the right words are associated with the right study group. It becomes pretty helpful in having that there. So that is the way that you would earn your CEU. Although, as I mentioned, a lot of you are simply using the Cert Master CE these days. You don't need to collect continuing education units, which makes it a little bit easier for me, quite honestly. Sometimes that helps too. That's probably the least expensive and easiest thing to do these days if you're someone who's trying to earn some CEUs. Well, don't forget about the objectives. Everything we did today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you've never seen these objectives, you're not ready for your exam. You need to be able to break these down and understand all of the things that are expected of you on the exam. Make sure that you download and use these as your checklist. It's surprising how many people have no idea that these exist, and they are extensive. They are critical for you to be able to pass your exam. Make sure that you get your hands on those objectives. You either can go to the Google machine and type in CompTIA exam objectives. And of course, you could also go to professormesser.com/objectives and have those available for you to download as well. Well, we've come to the end of another hour of study group. Stick around for the next hour, though. I'm going to open up the phone lines. I'm not done. I'm going to stick here and we'll have some people calling in and asking questions as well. The phone lines are open. You can ask any question you'd like, really, about anything. I have no idea if I'll answer any question about anything, but you could ask in any case. But we do one of these every month. You can, of course, go to the Professor Messer website and you can look at all of the archives of our study groups that we've done in the past. Or if you're watching this and you're wondering when is the next study group, we have another one on July the 11th of 2018. You can, of course, if this is after July 11th of 2018, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and you'll know exactly when the next live event is going to be. That's one of the best things that you could do. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. There's a new A+ question every day on Twitter. Go to professormesser.com/Twitter. Of course, professormesser.com/YouTube will get you all of the latest videos that we have available. professormesser.com/A+CN will take you to my A+ course notes. Something nice to have. Don't forget about my pop quiz collection at professormesser.com/PQC. My thanks again to GTS Learning and their special pricing for their book, and the live labs are available at professormesser.com/live labs. Don't forget to check the calendar. You'll know when this next study group is going to be. And of course, thank you for being here. We would not be able to do these study groups without you, and your participation is fantastic. Thanks for joining us on this one. Stick around for the next hour. We'll open up the phone lines and you'll be able to call in or at least see what other people are calling in about on the study group after show. But this ends our formal Q&A for this month's study group. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Now, where are those phone lines again? Let's find those. I don't think I have anything set up properly. Trying to get all of the phone lines, getting the lights turned on today was literally the hardest part of my day because they wouldn't turn on. Now we have light. You can see me now, but I was in the dark before and I couldn't do a study group. I literally have a ladder next to me now because all of the lights plug in near the ceiling, and the power distribution unit that I have up there that normally I access from a browser and turn on was not accessible. It's not talking to me. I have a feeling that one of these storms that came through managed to take out the system, and I'll have to do some troubleshooting to see if it's gone for good or if it's something that might be temporary, but it's still not talking to me. Just want to do a quick check. Let's get the phone lines going, though. This will take a moment as I step through this, so be patient with me. Hello, chat room. Hello, everybody. Let's go through and start up this call-in line, so you're able to call into the phone line. I'll put the phone numbers up in just a moment. Haven't done this in a month or so. I'm a little rusty. Trying to figure out where all the buttons are. How does this work again? Let's call in. I'm going to call in through my Skype, and then I'll give you the number that you can use to call in through the Skype. That's really loud. Let's turn that down a little bit. And it's going to ask for some numbers, and I have to type them in on my screen. And we type this, and we hit a pound sign. And it says,
enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Well, that sounds redundant, but we're going to do it anyway. I should make my 6-digit PIN number something that's easier to type.
Welcome.
See, welcome. Now that means that you're welcome as well. And how come there is nothing there on my screen to have that there? I would put up the phone number, but on my screen, let's see what this is set to. That's V1. I have that there and this here, and it's faded to black, and you can't see anything. So you can see this. There's the phone number, 855-785-RJ45, 785-7545, but it's not layering on my screen anymore, which is a shame. Maybe if I do it this way, no, it's just not going to happen, people. We're just not going to have it up. If I put it here and put me there, that's too bad. See, you leave for a month and that's what happens. But if you go to professormesser.com/live, you'll see the number there as well. The number is one that you just can't see, 855-785-7545. If you're watching at professormesser.com/live, the phone number is there as well. You're welcome to call in. If you're calling on Skype, it's free. You don't have to have any Skype minutes. You put a +1 at the beginning for +1, 855-785-7545, and you can call in on the Skype for free. No money exchanges hands at all. That makes it very easy. And we have some people that, regardless of the problems I have with my overlays, were able to negotiate this just fine. For instance, the 571 area code is here. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mr. Messer. This is Ansa. We talked back in March, I believe.
Wow, way back in the day. Welcome. Well, thanks for calling back. What can we do for you?
I just wanted to say thank you because I was the student at Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
Who had the storm at that time.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say thank you because I actually passed the Security Plus exam.
Oh, great.
And yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. Just for people who are there, just as advice, do exam objectives. You stress that so many times. And it the night before, even though I would do this a little bit earlier, but I decided to do it the night before. I went through all the exam objectives to make sure if I knew everything, and apparently I didn't. I knew a lot of the stuff, thankfully. So I actually had to go through a couple things before, what was one-time pad. I didn't know that at first.
Okay, sure.
And stuff like that. And then I also watched your videos, so I was pretty happy that I finally passed it. I failed it once, but I passed it after. And if you fail it, I did see this on the exam. They actually do re-ask the questions that you didn't pass in the previous exam. So my second exam, I actually did do the first exam questions also. So I did notice that. So try as a recommendation, I would just try to think about the questions you got wrong, but don't like actually publish that. Just keep in mind of it, and then try to figure out like on the internet if what it really was, or a book. Then if you come across it, at least you'll have a better chance of doing it. So that's my advice.
That's good advice. Did you end up, because a lot of people don't realize right now with the Security Plus exam, there's actually 2 different exams you could take. You get to choose which one you want. You took the 401, did you say?
Yeah, like it's only a month left, but still, I think my method should be like usable for the 501.
I think so too. And what the thing you run into is there's a finite number of questions you could possibly get on the exam, and every time you take the exam, whether it's for the first time or the second time or the third time, which I've done, whenever you do that, they're going to pull a random set of questions. But of course, you may get questions that you had before, so it's always good to remember some of those you got wrong, even if it's not exactly the same question you get the second time through, which it could be. At least the topics that you missed the first time are things that now hopefully you've studied up on and you're ready, even if they ask it a different way the second time through. Well, that's great. The 401 is one that is, as you mentioned, expiring in a couple of months. So you were able to get in just under the wire, and now you're good for 3 years.
Yeah, I actually got it last month, but like I wanted to just thank you at this time because like it was May 18th I got it, but I didn't see a live session until this day, so I waited till this day to thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I did the easy part, quite honestly. You're the one who had to do the hard part of the studying and taking the exam. So congratulations. Enjoy that certification. It's a good one that a lot of hiring managers are looking for. And it's really just the beginning of learning more about security and information technology. I was a security systems engineer for many years, and I loved doing it. So the world is your oyster at this point. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, I actually had 2 questions.
Sure.
One of them's a little minuscule, but the other one is maybe a little more important to my opinion. Okay, so you may not know it, but I'm going to ask it anyway, or if anyone knows in the chat. There's a thing called Cert Master Continuing Education.
Sure.
On CompTIA, and what it is like is basically if you take an exam, like only the Security A Plus and Network Plus have it, and it's only for people who are eligible. And like how you be eligible is like you have the exam, and it has to be like for the A Plus, it's 801. It's soon to be 901 when they make like the next series, and then like for the 401, the Security Plus 401 rather than the 501. And then I think the Network Plus 006.
Yep.
And like basically what the program is like you watch these videos up to like it's 4 to 6 hours, and it's supposed to refresh your mind on what's current and like what's up to date.
Right.
And you get questions like 100%. Like it's you keep going through these quizzes, and you have to pass all the quizzes with 100%. And I heard like you get as many times as you want. And it's far easier. But I wanted to hear like either from you or from the chat if they ever done it and like what's their opinion on it. That's all.
This is the thing I was mentioning at the beginning and near the end of the study group this month, is that this is what a lot of people are doing for renewals. So a lot of you that have had your certifications in the past, you know that to renew your certification, you had to collect a number of continuing education units, and then you would have to pay a yearly maintenance fee to be able to submit those continuing education units to CompTIA. You have to collect a certain number of those CEUs in 3 years, and if you've done that, then you can renew for another 3 years. There's also the option to take a higher level exam. So if you have taken the A+ and you end up passing the Network Plus, by passing the Network Plus, you are also renewing your A+ at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no additional continuing education maintenance fees if you do it that way. The Cert Master CE is something that's relatively new from CompTIA. And as you mentioned, you described it perfectly. You take the Cert Master CE, there's content that you're learning. As they mention on the website, it takes about 4 to 6 hours, depending on your knowledge. You have to pass 100% get 100% of the questions right. But as you mentioned, you can take these over and over and over until you get the 100%. Takes you about 4 to 6 hours. And at the end of it, you're renewed for another 3 years for this highest level Cert Master CE that you're taking. And you don't have to pay any of the CE maintenance fees. You don't have to collect any CEUs from anywhere else. I've literally had people in my chat room that say, my certification is expiring next week. I don't have anywhere near the right number of continuing education units. And they were for the Security Plus. And he had a Security Plus, a Network Plus, and an A Plus. And he said, should I study for the next week and try to take the CISA Plus so that I could renew all my certifications? And I said, why don't you spend $175, take the Cert Master CE Security Plus, and then you're renewed for another 3 years. And then you can decide whether the CISA or something else is the right move at that point. And he did that. He went online, he bought it. The next day he showed up and goes, I'm done. I finished it. I'm renewed for another 3 years. That was easy. So it's a very easy way to renew. It's very cost effective, and it's quick and it's simple, and anyone can do it. I highly recommend doing it.
Okay, that's good. No, I was thinking of doing that, and the other option was I was studying for I'm thinking of doing 3 exams after this. The Linux Plus, which is totally separate,
yep.
And then the cybersecurity, the CYSA, and then the CASP, the Advanced Security Practitioner.
Sure.
I was thinking of doing either one of the 3 because, I got books for those. I have ebooks for them. And then I also know Cybrary has couple videos. I'm hoping that you eventually will. I know you have a busy schedule. I totally understand that, but maybe in the future you may have videos on those CompTIA exams, and maybe I'll just use those also because I really like your material since it's structured properly. But okay, so I'm thinking of doing either two. It's good to know that this continuing education is actually effective. So I might consider that depending on which one I accomplish first. So okay, that's good to know. Okay, thank you for answering that one, but I have another question.
Sure.
Okay, so it doesn't have to do with the exams itself, but it has to do with professionalism. I was noticing in your videos, every video you've made or any live chat that you've had, you've always talked consistently. You've never had any stuttering. You can interact with people without a problem. And I just want to know your tactics behind that because I think it's phenomenal that you can speak in such a proper manner without any slip-ups. So because I know you have 25 plus years of experience. I wanted to know, did you learn how to properly have proper clientele and communication skills with other people, or what's your effective methods?
It is one that is practice. It is one that does not come naturally. It's one that you have to really work on. And in my particular job roles that I've had throughout the years, it's one that I've been fortunate enough not only to have this type of skill training in the jobs that I had, but also on the job having the need to be able to do this as well. So whenever I started off in technology, I was literally driving around South Florida delivering printer cables and installing monitors and installing memory. I really was not a presentation or a job that required a lot of public speaking. There was no public speaking in that particular job. But one of the challenges with our society in general is that people are very uncomfortable with public speaking. And I think it's because people haven't done this before. There's an odd saying that people are more afraid of speaking in public than they are of dying, which means that if you're at a funeral, you'd much rather be in the ground than someone who's speaking at the funeral. And I get that to some degree. I got a job through the years, I moved up through the ranks and eventually got a job working as a pre-sale systems engineer for, at the time, Network General. It's a company that made protocol analyzers. They made the sniffer product. And part of that job was going from place to place. I'd visit 3 or 4 customers a day and say, I have the most amazing technology product to show you. I can't wait to show this to you. Let me tell you what this is about. And it was a lot of standing up in front of a bunch of people you've never met before, and usually in a small conference room, and putting up a slide or showing a demonstration of a product and stepping through the product to see how it works. So at the beginning, I was horrible at this. I had notes that I would read. The sniffer is a product that will allow you to see the protocol. That nobody wants that. Nobody's interested in watching someone go through that. So you end up getting techniques and a pattern and a method of doing this that allows you to communicate with people and become more comfortable with communicating with people. And I think from an IT perspective, that's an important skill to have. That company was nice enough to send us to public speaking training. So it was one where you would stand in front of a video recorder at the time, a VHS machine. They would record us speaking, and then we would play it back, and they'd look at how you were standing, what you were doing with your hands, the information you were saying out of your mouth, and really break down everything and say, this could be better, this could be better, this could be better, this could be better. And it was great because you do get an understanding of what am I doing with my hands? Do I hold my hands in front of me? Do I hold them behind me? Do I put them in my pocket? It's weird things like that. And of course, they talk to you about how you speak in front of people and some of the techniques. That was good as well. But even if you go back to my 600 series A+ videos, the very first set of videos I created, which are still available on YouTube, there were still these mannerisms or these phrases or things I would say in the video that they were a crutch. They were an audio crutch where I would simply say it over and over at times. So although I wasn't umming or awing my way through the video, I would at times find myself saying similar phrases over and over again. So I watch those. And of course, I'm watching them because I have to edit them before I put them on YouTube, and I'm cringing at myself when that happens. So you learn from that as well. So it was just over time, literally over tens of years. So if anyone's ever interested in making a video or doing a demo, it's going to be hard at first. You're awful at first doing this, but you become more comfortable with it. The camera is something that is very weird. It's a weird environment. You're hearing yourself talk in your ear. You're watching yourself on the replay and it doesn't sound right. And after a while, all of that fades away and it becomes more of how can I get this topic explained properly to someone who's in front of me? So it's just practice, practice, practice. Sort of a long, somebody in the chat room even mentioning Toastmasters is a great way to learn public speaking because there are many Toastmasters groups that's a group that is designed to help you speak better. The training I went to was a Decker training for learning how to speak in front of folks. And the Toastmasters were good too. Eventually I got a job being a corporate spokesperson for network associates. So I would go to huge conferences of hundreds of people and stand up on stage and say, here's what's interesting about this technology, everybody. And it just became very natural to stand up in front and talk about these things. It's just a matter of doing it over and over and failing miserably, either on the phone or in person. I would have some horrible presentations where I just wanted to put a bag over my head and get out of town. But you learn from those. Whenever you mess that up, you just keep it moving and you do just fine.
Okay, that makes total sense. The only I always hear from other people, but I only wanted to hear it from you because you're probably one of the best sources for IT. So I want you have more than 20 years of experience. So I'm because I want to go into IT, of course, and I want to see because I'm thinking it's going to be a little bit different than when you're at a bank or when you're at retailers, other stores like that. The way you have to present yourself is going to be different in different fields. So I wanted to get first word from you just to make sure would it be similar. But practice, yeah, I always heard that because I definitely have practiced before in public speaking. I've done where I had to improvise. So I'm given I've done this as a club. So I used to have a topic. I would have to come up. I would have 2 minutes of prep to make a 5-minute speech out of it and talk about how it may exemplify something. If I gave you a rock, I would talk about where it's indirectly it represents war or violence or something like that, and I would have to speak and give examples of why that's the case. So yeah, all right, that sounds good.
Well, I appreciate you calling. Congratulations on your Security Plus and best of luck.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. Enjoy your day, okay?
You too. That's actually the public speaking part is really another skill. I know how to install Linux. I know how to troubleshoot Windows. I know how to work with a certain application in macOS, and I can talk to people. People sometimes don't recognize how important that skill is to everything else that we're doing. Back to the phones. Thanks for holding the 561 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi, Professor Messer. This is Ed from Miami Lakes calling
Welcome,
back.
Ed. How are you, sir? What can we do for you today?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm happy to report that I have just recently passed the 401.
All right. See, a lot of people getting that 401 in before the exam is retired. I think that is a good move on your part. What overall, without giving away anything or violating your candidate agreement, what do you think is was the most telling or memorable part of the exam?
Well, yeah, be honest with you, I thought it was a little bit more difficult than what I expected. I thought I had a pretty good grasp on all of the objectives, and maybe the way they asked the questions, I'm not really sure. But I mean, I literally gone through thousands of Q&A questions from different sources, and in addition to watching your videos and so on. And it was challenging, and I kind of eked by. I got a 771.
Now,
So
Pat,
I was happy.
You didn't eke by. You studied exactly the right amount of time to be able to pass this exam. You didn't waste any of your time at all.
Yeah, well, apparently it worked out, and I was just thrilled to death that I passed it. And certainly your videos and everything, it definitely helped. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The
but
questions
now
are multi-layered questions. They don't ask you anything directly on the exam. And in some cases, a lot of what they ask you in the question has nothing to do with the final sentence, which is what they really want to know. And you do have to kind of decipher that when you're on the exam. So good for you.
Thank you. I guess the question now I have is, what's the next logical step? Because, for instance, I know you may have heard this company before. It's called UDT.
I don't think so.
United Data Technologies.
I think I have heard of United Data.
Yeah, they're located in Doral. And anyways, they had an opening for an intern position in cybersecurity. And I'm like, fantastic. I mean, even though it doesn't offer any compensation, just the fact that I would get some hands-on experience would be great. Unfortunately, I haven't heard back from them yet. I mean, I've sent my background mostly is in accounting. I mean, that was been my professional career. But I've got to pass the test, and I've got certified, and I thought maybe that would be a foot in, an opening into this position, and it may not be enough. So if that's the case, what would you suggest the best route for me to go?
This is the part where everybody really takes this divergent path. So once you get past the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus, now it becomes more of a niche thing that people are trying to do. And it's one where you can almost, in fact, in your particular case, you might even want to build on some of your past experience to take advantage of what you're doing going forward. For example, for you, finding a corporate environment or finding one that is an accounting firm or one that has previously been an accounting firm might actually provide you with an advantage of talking to their IT group. Many times I have people come to my site and say, I was a nurse and now I'm getting into IT. And I'm like, I said that this would be a perfect position for in a hospital, working for hospital IT, because you really understand what's happening there. Some people have been truck drivers and now they've got IT knowledge. I say transportation companies, they have IT groups as well. So you may be able to leverage some of this knowledge you had with a previous set of skills into doing something with IT. And in South Florida, there's a lot of options for that, either in Dade County, Broward, or Palm Beach, to be able to find these enormous companies that have some type of insurance, finance, accounting, financial services are enormous organizations. That might be another good place to look into, rather than something necessarily like UDT that would be very focused on IT service providing that's more generic. In any case, to answer your question, now you have to figure out what to do next. And what to do next really is up to you. Some people like the idea of doing penetration testing, and there's a big push lately to learn more about using these penetration testing tools to get CompTIA, for example, as a Pen Test Plus certification they're coming out with. But I will tell you, in IT security, penetration testing they might be 1% of the available jobs out there. It's a very small number of available jobs. I don't necessarily recommend people go down that route if they're looking for the best possible chance of getting a job in security. Instead, the people that are working in IT security are configuring firewalls, they're setting up VPNs, they're configuring certificates, they're setting up and understanding SIMs, so all of the log files from everything, and creating reports. These are skills that can help anybody when they're working in IT security. So it may be that you, instead of focusing on a more generic security certification, maybe you go towards a Checkpoint or Palo Alto Networks firewall certification. Maybe you get the Cisco security certification, because a lot of people have Cisco technology. And another thing, if you're interested in security, I always recommend is that if you feel that you don't have a very strong foundation in networking, that is the thing that is going to help you the most in IT security, is to have a very strong networking foundation. So it may be that you got Security Plus. A lot of people go back at that point and go get a Cisco CCENT and CCNA routing and switching certification, because that's what's going to help them not just with networking, but also leverage that into the security side. So it's now more about narrowing your focus. Before, with A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, these are very broad strokes. At this point, now it's time to start figuring out, what do I like doing, and then narrowing down focus and going down into that. And with security, you can go many different directions. So at this point, you can't go wrong. You can't make a bad decision. You just need to figure out what interests you the most.
Well, I think you touched on a very important point. That my background is not in IT, and so it's challenging to get into the field. But I think that what I'm trying to do at this point now is just get more knowledge in networking. And I found a set of books that I've got from Amazon. It's the Jones and Bartlett Learning group of books, and they've really got a fantastic set of books on networking and network security and firewalls and so on. And I'm going through those, and I find that I'm really learning a lot of information from that also. So I'm trying to increase my base knowledge in networking at this point. And I think that's going to be a help too. But you're right. Maybe if I looked at the Network Plus certification or something along those lines, would certainly would help me.
One of the things I found, because I worked in a position with IT security where I was representing a firewall company, and so I would go into many different companies, 3-4 companies a day, and talk to them about our firewall technology. But all of the people I was talking to, almost 100% of the people I was talking to at that point, were people that used to be in the networking group. And that's something I just can't stress enough about this, is that it's such a natural progression to get into an organization, start at the help desk, move into the networking team, and then at that point transition into security. And it seems to be a universal path internally within these companies, primarily because IT security is so related to the networking piece of it. And a lot of people don't realize, when you're setting up a VPN connection and putting in a concentrator, how do you install that into the network? What type of IP addressing scheme are you using? How are you going to have it connect from the outside? How do you configure your firewall to allow access to the VPN? And if you do have a firewall, how do you put the firewall in place? Because you're not going to have one firewall, you're going to have 2 firewalls. And are those 2 firewalls going to be active passive, or are they going to be active active in this highly available configuration? And in either one of those, there's a completely different set of networking architectures that you're going to need to pull from. You're going to need to engineer and design them completely differently depending on how you're putting these into the network. Whether you're connecting to an IPsec VPN to a third party, which happens a lot, there's a huge amount of networking knowledge you need there. So one of the things I often will tell people is, make sure you are very, very comfortable on the network. And if you are, it's very easy to layer the security piece right on top of that. In fact, it's a natural progression. And a lot of the people I was working with day to day are the former network administrators that are now working on the security side. Now, it's changed a little bit over the years because we've needed more and more and more security people. So we're starting to pull people into the security ranks a little bit faster. But I can tell you that knowing this, the networking piece can only help you if you're planning to get into the IT security side.
And just to touch on one more point regarding that, it's so important to learn the OSI model and the TCP/IP model because the various attacks and so on happen at various levels of those levels of the 7 different levels.
A lot of people don't realize the OSI model is really what we use to communicate between different entities. So I would walk into the room with this next generation firewall technology, and people would ask, well, wait a second, and when it's doing that filtering, is that filtering at layer 3 or is it going up to layer 7 to do the filtering? And I'd say, well, it's happening at the layer 7 and here's how we're doing it. So immediately people are able to categorize and put things in different perspective depending on what OSI model you're talking about. I've had people send me emails and say, this OSI thing is ridiculous. Why would I ever want to know it? And I'd say, well, that's because I would go every day and talk to customers and use it every single day when I talk to them. That's why it's extremely valuable to be able to communicate that way, even though it seems a little bit nebulous and it seems like this isn't real, because it isn't. It's still a very common form of communication that you can use between technology professionals that helps put everything in its correct place.
Okay, well, I just wanted to thank you very much for your help and helping me pass this exam.
Absolutely. Congratulations. Best of luck with that. You're in a great geographic location. So if you're trying to take some of this knowledge you had on the accounting side and apply it into a financial services side, that could probably be a very strong play for you once you start looking around at the opportunities available in Dade and Broward.
Okay, thanks a lot, Professor Messer.
Absolutely.
Have a nice day.
Thanks, Ed. That's what a good situation to be in. You've got the certification. There's plenty of opportunity in your particular geography. Now's the time to go take it. And maybe it's going to get going to some of those local study groups, some local user groups in your area. Go to a Microsoft user group, a Cisco user group, a VMware user group. Meet the people that are there. Find those financial companies that are at the user groups. Now you got a love connection. Now you're making it happen. Let's go back to the phone. 662 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, this is Jarvis calling from the state of Mississippi.
Welcome, Jarvis. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
Yes, excuse me if I'm rather redundant, but I just wanted to ask a question concerning the 901, 902 exam.
Sure.
How long do we still have before that exam gets converted over to another form? How long do we still have before it expires?
What a good question. It's not redundant at all because I didn't even mention it at the beginning of the presentation, and I probably should have, because the existing 901, 902 exam series was released on December the 15th of 2015. And so we know from past experience with CompTIA that they tend to update the exams about every 3 years, which means I would expect to see an updated exam series at the end of this year. December 15th, 2018 would be 3 years. So we're thinking December timeframe, somewhere in there, to be able to see a new exam show up. Now, what CompTIA generally does is once they release a new exam, there's usually about a 6-month overlap where both exams are available. So that means if you were busy studying for the 901 and suddenly December hit, they're not going to cut you off and say, sorry, all that work you did was worthless. Now you have to move to the new version. They don't do that. They instead give you about a 6-month time period. So about this time next year, I would still expect the 901 and 902 to still be available. So if you started studying right now, you've got at least a year before that exam goes away. And there's really no difference in the certification you earn, whether you take the 901, 902 exams and earn your A+ certification. That is exactly the same certification you would earn if you took a newer set of questions, because it's really just the version of questions that you're taking. associated with this. So that's where the important part is don't think that a different set or version of exams is better or worse than the other. It really isn't. As long as you pass both of them, you earn exactly the same certification.
Okay, and that was a major concern to me because at this moment I was thinking it was August, so I was kind of panicking.
Right.
Because I'm also in the presence of completing my MBA as well.
Wow.
So I'm trying to just double all of this up on myself at the same time. So, and also, a lot of us have been having debate about CompTIA's Cert Master programs, and
Okay.
I know they have it for the A+, the Network Plus, the Security Plus, and all of that. In your findings for people who are choosing that avenue, I mean, have those questions been somewhat close to what the exam represents from anyone that you maybe dealt or conversated with, conversed with?
I wouldn't categorize the Cert Master, and this is different. We talked earlier about the Cert Master CE that is used for renewal, but CompTIA also has a series of training programs called the Cert Master programs that they use for training. And I wouldn't necessarily say that the questions in there are similar to the type or style of questions you would get on the exam, but I would say that the way that they train you helps you learn that content in a very easy way. It's a good training program because they ask you questions in this program, and if you get them wrong, they spend a lot of time teaching you the things that you don't know. So it's the way it's laid out is pretty ingenious in the way that they operate, because they try to focus on the things you don't know well so that you can learn those much better and be ready when the exam comes along. I have noticed lately CompTIA is doing a lot of things along this area, and I don't think they're I'm not in a position to say anything that may be coming in the future, but I like the direction as a company they're going with these training materials. I like the Cert Master CE for renewal. The Cert Master, I think, was a good first step for their training. I can't wait to see what they do next.
That's right. And and thank you for your insight, and also thank you for these sessions. They've been very helpful for me in my
Great.
journey of completing this. And also to your caller who might still be listening, he may be gone. That was 2 callers before me. When it comes to public speaking and developing that skill, working in any customer-facing IT environment and help desk, for me, I developed it working for Best Buy Geek Squad for 5 years. You develop that, and that just comes along with the territory. You have to know how to speak and relate to the customer, and also for those who are not as condensed with IT terminology and things like that, you have to also bring it down. So that's very helpful what you said as well.
I think that's true. It's just a matter of doing it over and over, some repetition. And then once you get the repetition, having somebody hone some of those skills, and then more repetition, and then honing it some more and more repetition. It's just a constant rotation through there. And after a while, it does start to get a little bit easier. It's not easy at first, but it does start to get a little bit easier as you go along. I agree. And you're right. Sometimes being thrown into a job where you have to have that level of communication with somebody helps a lot. And you see that on the A+ and the 901. There's an entire section on communication. That's how important it is, not just to CompTIA, but to the management and the company that you're working for. They want to be sure you're able to do that as well.
That's right. Thank you very much for your time, and hey, much luck to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Jarvis. Take care. It's a skill that once you have that skill, once you're able to communicate, you're comfortable doing that, there's a whole world of jobs available. I was someone who was an engineer level person, but my job was to fly from place to place and do presentations. That was it. And from place to place, I would fly internationally. I would fly to Australia, to Thailand, to Japan, to Korea, to United States, into Canada, over to London, Germany, Milan. I would just get on a plane. I would be in another place and I would do the presentation. I would tell people about this technology. That's the type of thing that people are willing to give you money to do. It was really a crazy type of thing now that I think about it. And it's because those skills are so valuable in someone being able to do that. Let's go to the 202 area code caller. You're there. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm Ed calling from Washington, D.C.
Welcome. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
You mentioned earlier that people sometimes prefer to be 6 feet under rather than speak in public. I don't necessarily want to be 6 feet under, but you feel the pressure all of a sudden. I'm calling because I'm taking. I actually signed up to take the A+ exam in a month from now, and that gave me discipline to actually get it through. But this is unfortunately after I kind of went out of a training program due to the time that it was taking from 8 a.m. to 4, and I didn't have much time to work. So I thought, and I was also struggling with, my career decision. I came from a teaching background, and I thought I would go into youth development and that sort of thing. And I was constantly struggling with, is this what I really want to do? And I honestly really wanted to go into this because not only is it where the future is going with cybersecurity and all that stuff, everything being integrated, and I thought maybe in the future, just something stable, I can do this, be a good source of income, and and allocate that money for opening some youth development wilderness camp kind of experience, for especially, I don't know, if not here, for abroad, Anyway, so I've been constantly struggling with this idea of like putting my head into it, and just really, not that it was hard, part of the training that I was in, I was going through it, but I didn't read the chapter every day. It was like a chapter a day. We're reading the Mike Myers book, and they give us quite a bit of resources.
That's a lot.
It was helpful, but
I say that's a lot. That book, the chapters in that book are pretty thick.
Yeah, they are, and it was, sometimes there were some days I got through it, but other days quite frankly, I was liking myself, and again, it was just a mental battle that I'm still quite struggling with, and even now that I signed up for this exam, I still find myself procrastinating a little bit, watching some YouTube videos, and there's a bit of a discipline issues on my end, but it's just that I can't get my mind to it, and I don't want to sound like I hate this thing, but I love computers. I even wanted to do engineering when I was in school, but I even took a computer science course when I was in high school at a community college, but it wasn't something that I had in mind. And now that I'm getting into it, it's like one of those things. See, when I was teaching, I would tell kids, you're scared of the things that you're not good at.
Right.
And
fear of the unknown.
Things happening to me. I'm like dreading it. Yeah, I'm dreading it because I know I'm not as good at it maybe. And the more I practice, I get confident. But it's just at the moment I'm kind of in that that state. And I don't know. I don't have any particular, I guess, question that was laid out to ask you. I just wanted to get some sort of thought from you, and what would be the best thing. I was going to bypass the A+ and go to Security Plus, since that's really where I wanted to go, and I wanted to avoid the two prices for the 901 and 902 separately, and just go with Security Plus, since I had a bit of the, again, from the training, a bit of the A+ under my belt a little bit, but now I decided to just maybe stick with A+, get that under my belt anyway, and just go on. So I'm kind of in a sticky situation. What do you say? And
your story is very similar to mine. I started off right out of high school. I went to college as an engineering major. At that time, not computer science major necessarily. At that time, there was no internet. So this is before any of those things existed. But computer science was effectively you had to know how to program. It wasn't necessarily the engineering side of computer science and hardware. It was really more software-based computer science. There was a little bit hardware component in there. But I started in engineering, just generic first-year engineering. You take some of the very basic engineering classes, and I realized that did not interest me. It was not where I wanted to go. I thought I was very interested in computing. I was very interested in technology, but I didn't want to build the technology. I wanted to use the technology. And unfortunately, and even today, some or many 4-year degreed programs don't really teach how to use the technology. Some places, some colleges and universities get it. Some colleges and universities don't get it quite yet. But I ended up going into a business management degree because I felt that even though technology wasn't pervasive, at least not like we think of it today, I was still working with personal computers, which are relatively new. I was working at the computing center at the university. I got a part-time job there. And so I was at least experienced enough to see this is going somewhere. And I got a management degree just so I thought this would be a good overall degree to have when I finally managed to get into doing something more relating to security. So I was kind of in the same scenario. I wasn't interested in building. I wasn't interested in programming. How can I do more with this technology? And that's what I ended up doing was going to business management. These days, you have a lot more options. These days, community colleges, universities have a lot more programs that teach you how to work with computers, how to use the network, how to do more with security. In your example, though, going through a book, a chapter a day is very, very aggressive. That is that's a lot in a very short period of time. And perhaps what would help you more is to get more hands-on and, of course, slow the pace way down. One nice thing about the A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or most IT industry certification programs is you can almost self-pace yourself through any one of these. There's very few that you would ever find a certification where you couldn't do this yourself. There's just so many resources available, different books available, video training courses, and plenty of hands-on. And I think if you're somebody who's sat down with the Mike Myers A+ book and you realize this is a lot of content, first, the book adds a lot of things you don't need to know for the certification, but still are useful things. This may be the time where you put the book to one side, open up the computer, pull the cover off of it, unplug it, pull the cover off of it, and have a look at what's underneath. Maybe build your own computer. Maybe take apart a computer that's broken and try to see what's wrong with it. Those are the types of things that are more practical. They're hands-on. It's a different way of learning, and it might be enough to bridge the gap between what you're reading in a book and seeing the memory modules, looking at the traces on the motherboard for the bus, being able to see the expansion slots, and really tie all of those things together. I think you really need 4 things to be able to pass an exam. You need a good book, you need a good video series, you need plenty of Q&A, you need plenty of hands-on. And don't ever force yourself down the road of just doing one of those things. Try to get a little balance across all 4 of them, and I think you'll do pretty well.
Yeah, the training that I mentioned, I didn't go into details, but they did try to incorporate hands-on activities. Where we, opened up the computer, old computers, looked at the motherboard and that sort of thing, CPU and all that stuff. And like I said, I just didn't finish with the program, but was going fast as it was. It was a chapter a day, but they were trying to incorporate, because we were there all day. They were trying to incorporate, the hands-on aspect of it to make it, less of just a cramped and but. Either way, because I had a glimpse of that, from the bit of the hands-on stuff, because I initially started off studying for the Security Plus, and then I realized maybe I should just go a step down and get my foundation, so that I don't pretend to know what I don't know when I get to a position later on, and so I started off with A+, and they, and I did those things, but I'm still at a position where I either have to go forward and push through, or I still don't feel confident that I know my stuff. And even the previous caller, even Ed, I think, before, I guess, 2 callers ago, he was saying how he didn't, even though he did thousands of questions for the Security Plus, he felt like he was still, he wasn't as prepared as he thought. He barely made it or something, even though I'm sure he did his, his studies well, and he worked hard, and I don't want to underestimate it. And maybe I'm also mentioned. I heard you mention the Cert Master for the previous caller, with the previous caller and several calls down lines ago, and the way you explained it sounded like a bit like Khan Academy, kind of training you so that for mastery rather than just kind of hopefully, I don't know, I haven't tried it, the Cert Master thing, but would you say that's a more viable option? If there's a concept that I'm not really good at, will train me on that, or.
I think a better way to approach this is much more incremental than what you were getting before. I have gone to more week-long corporate training classes where I was a student than I can count. At least 3 times a year, depending on where I was working, I would fly to a city. You're somewhere you've never been before, or you're in a hotel room. You go down at 7 in the morning. They keep you there through dinner at 9 o'clock at night. You stumble back to your room, sleep as much as you can, go back at 7 o'clock the next morning, and it all repeats again. And after the 3rd day of that, and we're talking about trained professionals who have been through this before, who understand the process. They know what's expected of them. They've been through these training classes before. But after the third day, you are so over it. The brain turns to mush. You're not really in it much anymore. It's hard to stay in the mode of learning with something like that. I can't even imagine doing that over more than a week and trying to keep up with what's going on. So the first thing I would recommend is cut these things up into smaller pieces. Nobody can learn that way. Nobody can sit there for 8 hours a day or more, try to absorb all the things necessary to know for these certification courses and be able to keep up that pace. You just can't do it. We are not programmed as human beings to be able to handle that. So smaller pieces, a longer time frame. On average, it takes people generally 3 to 6 months to be able to learn everything they need to know for one of these exams, for the 901, and another 3 to 6 months for the 902. A lot of people see these things you can go to that are these very high-speed training classes that take you through a week's of content, and at the end of the week, you're ready to take the exam. No, you're not. There's no possible way you can be ready for that much content in a week's worth of time. It just doesn't work that way. So take all of the things you've learned and what you've gone through and just shrink down the content, shrink down the pace so that you've got a reasonable bite-size amount to take at one time, and you're going to do fine.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I'm taking time from the other callers, but do you think then, I lost my thought when I said that, I should reschedule my exam. I signed up for July 12th. I thought I'd do it. I'm taking my mom to on a vacation to Bahamas. I signed up for a cruise ship, and I thought I'd do it a day before that. And do you think I should reschedule before sometime? Don't do it within a month then, since I don't think I'm that ready.
Well, you don't have to make that decision now. You have up to, I think, 24 or 48 hours before the exam to be able to reschedule, and you can do that online. So they make it very easy for you to be able to reschedule. A lot of people like scheduling for a particular day because it really drives you to study. When you know that you're going to take that exam on that day, they use the exam objectives. They go through the list. They figure out what they need to know, and somehow they cram it all into the right amount of time that they can take it. But a couple of days before, you should be able to look at your exam objectives and say, you know what? I am just not comfortable with this. Let's push it off a week, or let's push it off a month, or they allow you to push it off. So take advantage of that. Use it as a motivational tool to get you studying and get you ready to go in, because maybe you are ready to take the exam a month from now. Yeah. Or maybe you look at it a couple days before and you realize the smart part of me financially and from my own sanity is to do this after I get back from these things that I'm planning. Let's push it off another month and see how it goes. It's a perfectly reasonable way to look at it.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much. I got that advice on my list. I was preparing to take the MCAT. She told me once you set the date, you'll feel the urge to study. I don't want it to have a negative effect, though, but that's good. That's good advice.
I think it is.
Thank you so much, and
there's
thank you
always
for all the
a way
resources that you have available.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sir. Hope you have a blessed day. Oh, sorry. Were you saying something?
Oh, there he goes. Well, I appreciate it, too. Thank you for calling, and thanks for the idea. And I agree with the people in that forum that you were on saying, book the date. It is motivating. There's something mentally about it that drives you to study just a little bit more when you set those dates for yourself. Just know that you always have a way out. There's always a way to get around some of those things as well. Back to South Florida, 954 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller.
Hello. Hello. How you doing? This is Kevin. I talked to you like 2 months ago on here.
Okay. What can we do for you today? Thanks for calling.
Okay. I just seen that the previous caller mentioned about Mike Myers' material, whatever, and that's what I'm actually calling you about, is for clarification. Right now, I want to know, like, what's the difference between, when you're dealing with OSPF, what's the difference between the Hello packets and LSA, or when you do the LSA flooding?
This is, and for those of you listening in that are worried about the details of OSPF. Fortunately for your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus, you don't even need to know anywhere near this level of detail with OSPF, fortunately. Although, if somebody is in the mode of you're moving into the Cisco-related certification exams, it will be incredibly important to know some of these details about OSPF and some of the other dynamic routing protocols as well. And which certification are you working towards? Because you did mention Mike Myers, and I know he doesn't have Cisco, but which exam are you working towards?
I already passed the Network Plus, and I passed the A Plus. I call you up. I think it was earlier this year when I congratulated. I mean, I thank you for helping me out about that. And I passed both of them. I read his book, and I read his book, and I remember like he was saying stuff about OSPF, and he mentioned about the hello packets are the same as the LSA, and now I'm reading that's not the case. I mean, I'm seeing now that the hello package is dealing with the handshake protocol, and the LSA is a little bit different. That's dealing with the establishing a neighborhood or whatever. So I was just trying to get clarification because like. I know that his book is very long-winded, but unfortunately, there's a lot of erroneous things in his book.
Well, it's a really big. Mike Myers his books are so well liked because he goes into a lot of explanation about these topics, and I would say he intentionally goes into well over what you would need to know for the exam because that's his style. I'll also say that his books are also not liked for that very reason. So I guess it depends on your style of learning, whether that type of book is one that makes sense. If you like a book that is just full of information and you get into the book, you like to chew around on the details and really learn everything there is to know about these particular topics, those books might be good for you. If you're someone who just wants to learn exactly what you need to know for the certification and no more, then perhaps those books would not be the ones that you would want to use. But I will tell you the link state advertisements for OSPF and the details about the hello packets inside of OSPF are well outside the scope of what the Network Plus exam is going to want to know from you. And with OSPF itself, if you ever look at the OSPF specification, it is an enormous specification. It is a huge and very complex dynamic routing protocol. And there are many, many different types of link state advertisements in OSPF, more than you would ever need to know for really most uses of OSPF, quite honestly. But the hello packets and LSA do have two different functions in how they operate. But for the Network Plus, you don't even need to get into the details or the nuances of that. All you need to know is that this is a dynamic routing protocol. Here are the advantages and disadvantages of OSPF and how it operates at a very high level. And you won't have to get into the sub-protocols that OSPF uses to be able to send the link state advertisements and the other information. You don't need to know how to calculate the values that it uses for the routing parameters. You won't have to know any of that for your Network Plus exams.
Oh, well, I already passed that, so it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just like doing it for my own knowledge base, like how this works, because I read his book and I know that more and more I read different material. I'm starting to realize that some of the stuff I read in his book is not actually factually correct. That's why I know you're very knowledgeable, so that's why I came to you. That's why I'm calling you right now.
One of the challenges you have when writing some of these big books, and this is sort of across the board, it's not just Mike Myers' books, but all of them, is you can go back to the publisher and there is usually an addendum that is created from the book from the time it's printed, and they'll find things that are mislabeled or misnamed or have problems associated with it, and they'll correct them in the addendum. You may want to check that out. The main keys between link state advertisements and hello packets, though, in really almost any dynamic routing protocol, is these protocols need to be able to send updates to between routers, telling all the routers the directions. So it's almost like sending a map of what you know. Hey, if you want to send traffic to me, I know how to get to these locations. That's very generically speaking, a link state advertisement. But these routing protocols also keep track of whether a router happens to be available. That's usually what's done with things like hello packets or update packets, where they're simply every couple of seconds, or even minutes, they'll send messages to each other saying, hey, I'm just checking in. Are you still there? And a message will come back, yep, I'm still here. So if you want to send me data, I'm still available for you to send something like that. Those are two different types of conversations. Usually the link state advertisements are in a much longer time frame between updates, whereas the hello packets are ones that occur much more frequently. That way the router knows whether to send traffic down that link or not. That's a very broad and generic description of those two types of frames that are used in dynamic routing, and it's not just OSPF that uses those to be able to make it happen.
Yeah, another question I want to know about is with switches is the difference between a management port and a console port. Basically, is a management port is like for remote administration, and a console port is for local administration.
Generically speaking, a management port and a console port are effectively the same thing. They're used interchangeably as far as terms are concerned. You'll probably see on the outside of a switch or firewall or router, it is probably labeled console, but they really are talking about it as a management interface. That's where you would plug in your serial port to be able to communicate that and be able to use or access this. Many people will also connect modems to the management port or the console port and plug that into a phone line. That way they can access that exact same port just by dialing into the device to be able to access it. But it's exactly the same whether you were sitting in front of the interface and plugging into it or dialing in with the modem and plugging into it. You can use those terms interchangeably.
Okay, so if you're doing the out-of-band connectivity, you could do it to a console port instead of not doing to a management port?
Well, we use those terms interchangeably. So you would be out-of-band connectivity is with a serial connection, plugging into a device, and you're plugging into that console port, but we also call that the management port of that device as well.
Oh, okay. And also dealing with out-of-band connectivity is that I'm trying to figure out. I've been like Google searching for weeks now, trying to figure out like how does KVM over IP? How does that even work?
I wonder that sometimes myself. If you've ever been in a very large data center, a good example is one I was in that had just racks and racks and racks and racks of devices, and they could sit at a table at the end of all of these racks. And from this KVM over IP, they could simply type in, they wanted to go to rack number 2, device number 3, and it would connect to those. It was simply a way of extending the keyboard, the mouse, and the video over an Ethernet or IP connection between all of those. Very similar to extending Ethernet between different devices with IP addresses. They were simply adding on the keyboard, mouse, and video with a special dongle that was on the back of the device.
Yeah, can you use a KVM over IP in like in a different geographical area and do it like an off-site data center and use it like an off-site data center or something like that?
That's the beauty of IP. If you can connect to that IP address and you have access to get to that IP address, why not?
Oh, okay. I'm just doing like it for clarification because I know like you very like you're like a wizard. You know everything, so that's what I'm calling. That's what I'm calling you. Like I really want like clarification on all this stuff.
I would say generally people don't.
My last question.
Very quickly though, as a clarification, people generally don't do that though. Generally, having console access with a keyboard, a mouse, and video to a machine is an extremely high security type environment. You don't want people having that level of physical access to a device. So generally, the only way you would access those is going to a console that's inside of the data center. Very rarely would anybody risk transferring any of that capability outside of the room.
Oh, okay. And this is a personal question. Maybe some of your calls afterwards may experience this, but Microsoft, they customer service and with all the outsourcing, it's one of the most hectic things I have ever experienced in my whole entire life. And I don't know if people had problems with Microsoft before, but if you did, trying to, deal with their customer service is like pulling teeth out on Novocaine. It's really a complicated thing. And it's like, I don't understand why more companies, especially Microsoft, given their profits, why don't they hire more Americans to really expedite the problem instead of, having a real good communication, channel open up and everybody can understand what each other is saying. You can expedite the whole problem, resolve the problem much quicker. I just wonder that because like, you know, I experienced them, and it's very difficult with the language barrier and going back and forth, and it's like, wow, like, you know, Microsoft got too much money to be doing this.
Well, you lost me when you said the words Microsoft and customer service at the same time, and I was pretty much out at that point.
Well, they are very I had a problem about Windows 10, and it was like I had to call the customer service and deal with my product key, and it was just, you know, it was a long process that took me a whole entire week.
I notice customer service with a lot of these goes in waves. And Microsoft, they have good times and they have bad times. So it's one of those where you kind of have to hang on and use every resource available to you to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time.
I appreciate the call. That's a nice mix of different things. Customer service is one of the biggest challenges these companies have. It's an enormous expense center. There's no profit involved in customer service and tech support. It's an enormous expense. And sometimes trying to balance support with expenses becomes a bigger problem for us as the consumer to be able to do that. Let's go West Coast, 480 area code. There, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Benjamin Haggard. I'm calling from Phoenix, Arizona right now.
Welcome. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, in about, I don't even know. An hour now. I've just been studying like crazy. In about an hour, I'm actually going to take my 902 for the second time.
Okay.
And I barely missed it. I scored about a 680, I think it was, and I needed the 700.
Right.
So I was right there. Anything that I could really do in the next hour that would help me best when it comes to, I guess, passing this time, because I feel like what I was weak on was command prompt, and I studied that throughout the entire week because I took it Friday. And I just opened up command prompt on my computer and just went through almost every single command and just put help after it so that I could just get all the information I could.
And that's a great way to do it. There's not much I can tell you with an hour left, but what I usually tell people, especially if you've taken the exam before, and this is important for anybody who hasn't taken the exam before, for anybody who's watching or listening, they give you a sheet of paper when you're done with the exam, whether you pass or whether you fail. And that tells you what your score was, and it gives you a list of the topics that you did not get correct answers on. It doesn't give you the question, but it gives you the very broad topics, and it gives you the number of the exam objective of things that you missed. So you have this summary of information that here's the things you could study a little bit harder on. So at least they give you a perspective of where things might help you if you were to come back and take this exam again. That's one place you can go. I like what you did. You knew immediately I didn't do well on the command prompts, so I went and studied the command prompts. And of course, there's a lot of other things on that list as well. And hopefully you had time to go through that list and go through some of those objectives too.
Yeah.
Because the exam you're going to get this in an hour is going to be a different exam than you got the first time. There might be things that are the same, but then they will be in a different order. There will be a different setup, and you will certainly get questions you did not get the first time on this exam, and you might get some questions that you recognize from the first time too. So don't focus and think. A lot of people think they're going to be getting exactly the same exam again the second time through, which is not the case, and they end up studying all these things they remember, and then they go to the next exam, and it's a completely different set of questions. So be prepared for anything, and make sure you go through that list of exam objectives they gave you when you walked out to say, here's the things you should work on for next time.
Yeah, of course. And I've definitely been working on that. And actually, right after this call, I'm gonna just go through just right now and just go and look at a couple of your videos, because and by the way, I want to thank you so much because you helped me through my 901, which was definitely a struggle. I did not know how to exactly study well in the first place. And once I started looking at your videos, taking notes, and then reading through some of the book questions and going through almost every single question type that I put for this exam, it really taught me how to study a lot better. And I really do thank you for actually getting me through that 901 and for helping me through this 902 as well.
That's perfect. I'm glad it could help. As I mentioned earlier in another call, I did the easy part. Now it's you that has to do the hard part and go take that exam. I wish you best of luck on that 902.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Professor.
the call. That you just never know what you're going to be faced with when you go into these exams. You never know exactly what type of questions you're going to get. Some people get a lot of questions about a certain topic. So some people will say, I felt like the entire exam was printers when they took their 901 exam. And it could be that if the exam had a number of printer questions and then a mixture of other things. You know exactly the percentage that you're going to be faced with, though, because they list that in the exam objectives. So you know that the printer section will be a certain percentage of questions on the exam. And, of course, these sections are so large. I see this a lot for people that are taking the Network Plus exam, is that the Network Plus, people study and they get involved a lot in the IP subnetting part of this. But if you were to look at the exam objectives, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 lines in the exam objectives about subnetting. And some people end up getting 1 question about subnetting on the exam. Some people get 2. Some people don't get any questions about subnetting. And then they walk out of the exam thinking, I studied a week on subnetting and I didn't get any questions about it. You have to look at those exam objectives and see what the distribution is of these topics. I will tell people sometimes if they're getting hung up on a particular topic, drop it. Forget about it. Just leave that topic to the side. Spend all of the time you would have normally spent wrapped around the axle with that topic studying anything else on the exam objective. So make sure that you know exactly what you'll be faced with, understand what the distribution of these topics might be so that you can use your study time in the best possible way before you walk into the room. And if you know what to expect, you'll be that much further along whenever you're ready to sit down for the exam. Well, we've gone through another hour and 15 minutes of questions and answers. Thank you so much for joining us in the first hour of this. Thank you for joining us for the second hour Q&A and the dial-in and the after show, as we call it. We'll, of course, have another one of these next month. Feel free to call in. I've got another one of these for next week. So if you're somebody studying for your Network Plus exam, or you just want to call in for the after show next week, you're more than welcome to show up and call in for that. We've got plenty of content for the rest of the month. Of course, all of the replays are available to watch on the website. And if you like an audio version of this, you can also get it at professormesser.com/podcasts. Thanks for joining us this time. We will see you next time on the Professor Messer A+ Study Group.